how is it that money, taxpayer money, ends up in the hands of an organization, maybe multiple organizations that have terrorist affiliations? Tell us how this happened.
Folks, what you're about to hear is not a conspiracy theory. It's not internet rumor. It's sworn testimony before the United States Senate. And it should alarm every American who still believes that our government is supposed to serve the people, not bankroll their enemies. I just watched Senator Josh Hawley's follow-up questioning at the Afghan Vetting Hearing. And let me tell you plainly, this is one of the most disturbing examples of government corruption, negligence, and ideological rot that we've seen in years.
Thank you very much, Senator Cornyn. Ms. Marzouk, if I could just start with you. I want to start with something that you said a moment ago in your opening statement and that you also write about in your written testimony, because it's quite striking. You said that millions of dollars went to an organization, millions of taxpayer dollars went to an organization with terrorist ties, supposedly to help screen parolees to make sure they didn't have terrorist ties. So let's just talk a little bit about how this happened. In the fall of 2021, Congress passed and President Biden signed legislation providing about $1.7 billion in taxpayer funding to help settle for carrying out refugee and entrant assistance activities. That's the language from the statute. And much of that money was then made available to states. Have I got that right?
That's correct.
So we're talking about $1.7 billion originally, tens of millions, hundreds of millions that are available to states that then turn around and give it to grants in the form of grants to nonprofits. Have I got that right?
Exactly.
Now, where this nonprofit money goes is where the story gets interesting. These nonprofit groups are supposed to be helping with the settlement process. Some of them provided legal services to the refugees. Is that correct?
Yes, there was money for resettlement and separate money for legal services.
Got it. So how is it that money, taxpayer money, ends up in the hands of an organization, maybe multiple organizations that have terrorist affiliations? Tell us how this happened.
That is saying something. After the disastrous Biden administration withdrawal from Afghanistan, Congress appropriated roughly $1.7 billion in taxpayer funds to help resettle Afghan parolees. Americans were told this money would be used responsibly. We were told it would ensure safety. We were told there would be vetting, accountability, and oversight. What Senator Hawley exposed in this hearing is that none of that was true. Instead, massive amounts of your money, my money, working Americans' money, were funneled through a bureaucratic shell game and ended up in the hands of organizations with documented ties to terrorism. Not alleged ties, not speculative ties, court-documented ties. According to sworn testimony, millions of dollars were routed to the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE. This is an organization that was named an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation terrorism financing case. That's not opinion. That's a matter of federal court record. In that case, wiretaps showed CARE's founders explicitly stating they would present themselves as a civil rights organization while advancing the mission of Hamas. Hamas, a designated terrorist organization responsible for mass murder, rape, and the slaughter of civilians, including Americans. And yet somehow, under this administration, CARE was trusted to help vet Afghan parolees for extremist ties. Let that sink in. Senator Hawley drilled down on something that should enrage every taxpayer. CARE's funding does not show up clearly in federal databases because the money never went directly from Washington to CARE. Instead, it flowed from Health and Human Services to the states, then from the states to nonprofits, then sometimes from nonprofits to other nonprofits. A dark money pipeline funded by your tax dollars. In California alone, the testimony indicates CARE received around $15 million. In Washington state, over $1 million. And that doesn't even include money funneled through affiliated organizations like ICNA, which has its own history of extremist ties. This is not transparency. This is deliberate obfuscation. It gets worse. In California, a $7.2 million contract was issued to CARE of Greater Los Angeles. Sounds official, right? Except it's not a real legal entity. No federal EIN, no tax filings, number 990s, no accountability. That means millions of dollars simply vanished into a black hole. No way to track where it went. No way to audit how it was spent. If a private citizen tried to operate this way, they'd be in handcuffs by sundown.
Well, I think there's plenty of fault to go around. The first should lie with the terrorist-supporting nonprofit that presents itself as a legitimate civil rights organization.
And what would that be?
That's the Council of American Islamic Relations, CARE.
So this is a group that you say has ties to terrorism. Explain why that is.
It's not my opinion. They were an unindicted co-conspirator in the 2008 Holy Land Foundation. And in that trial, the wiretap from the 1993 meeting in which CARE was founded was brought into the federal public record. In that meeting, they specifically state that they are going to present themselves as a legitimate civil rights organization while furthering the mission of Hamas.
So you have an American court proceeding that finds that this entity has direct ties to Hamas, may be part of a Hamas funding network, but yet they're getting money. How much money did they get from the federal government to shepherd Afghan parolees?
It's very hard to track the funding because some state fiscal oversight portals show it more clearly than others. I can say with certainty that in California, they received $15 million. In the state of Washington, they received more than $1 million. And I can say also that an affiliate of CARE, which is called ICNA, the Islamic Center for North America, which has its own documented ties to extremism and terrorism, was also subgranted $1 million.
$15 million in one state, millions in other states going to this entity. Did you say that following October 7th, the leaders of CARE celebrated the Hamas attacks, or did they condemn it? Which was it?
Multiple leaders are on public record celebrating the Hamas attacks. The National Executive Director, the CEO of CARE California, and the Executive Director of San Francisco CARE all publicly celebrated October 7th.
So you've got an organization that was founded in conjunction with Hamas that a federal court has found is linked to the funding network that is somehow getting millions and millions of taxpayer dollars to help Afghan parolees, supposedly to make sure that they're not associated with terrorism. This group's associated with terrorism. Now, when I look at the federal databases to see if there's any reference to CARE, I don't see anything. Why is that? How have they hid the fact they've gotten so much money?
That's correct, Senator, because the money went from Health and Human Services to the states and from the states to nonprofits. In fact, nonprofits could then subgrant further. So the money did not go directly from the federal government to CARE, but rather an intermediary, and that is how they've hidden the money.
It's like a dark money network. Tell me this. Is there any reason to believe that any of the representations that CARE made to the states were false, or did they use false names? Did they use false front organizations? I mean, what do we know?
Absolutely. So in California, the contract between CARE and the state of California for $7.2 million is in the name of CARE of Greater Los Angeles. CARE of Greater LA is not a legal entity. It does not have a federal EIN. It does not file a 990. CARE of California is a legal entity. But since CARE of Greater Los Angeles isn't an entity, there is no way to track that $7.2 million.
There's the cash out. So in other words, because the money was given to a non-legal entity, we can't follow it. Now, I thought you said just a moment ago in your testimony that fewer than half of the Afghans that CARE said they would help have actually been provided assistance, or that is fewer than half of the number they submitted. So where's the rest of the money gone?
Well, in California, CARE is involved in an all-of-society political activism approach. They have paid activists in city councils, in school boards, lobbied in the state legislature to further their extremist agenda. I cannot say with certainty that that's where the federal dollars went, but I can say that on the ground, we see the political radicalization from CARE in every aspect of California civic life.
Were they involved in any way in anti-Israel, anti-Jewish protests after October 7th that we saw all over the country?
Absolutely. CARE's leadership was present at the universities of California and the Cal State campuses, and in fact, gave sermons and speeches on those campuses.
So for all we know, the money could have gone there. I mean, my point is, and thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, we need to find out where this money has gone. This is a scandal. This is corruption. And we've got to figure out how taxpayer money has ended up in the hands of yet another organization with terrorist ties. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
According to the testimony, fewer than half of the Afghans CARE claimed it would assist were actually helped. So where did the rest of the money go? The witness describes CARE engaging in all of society political activism, paid activists embedded in school boards, city councils, state legislatures, radicalizing civic institutions from the inside. Were federal refugee funds used for that? The witness stops short of stating it definitively, but the circumstantial evidence is damning. And we know this much. CARE leaders were visibly involved in anti-Israel and anti-Jewish protests after October 7th. They were present on university campuses. They gave speeches. They delivered sermons. At the very least, taxpayer dollars freed up CARE resources to push that agenda. This is not just about waste or corruption. This is about national security. The same administration that tells you parents at school board meetings are domestic extremists handed millions of dollars to organizations tied to Hamas. The same government that surveils law-abiding Americans claims it cannot track where refugee funds went. The same elites who lecture you about democracy allowed terrorist-linked nonprofits to operate as gatekeepers in the immigration system. That is not incompetence. That is ideological capture. This is why Senator Hawley's role here matters. He did what the media refuses to do. He asked direct questions. He followed the money. He forced uncomfortable facts into the public record. And predictably, you will not see wall-to-wall coverage of this hearing on cable news. You won't see breathless headlines. You won't hear accountability demands from the usual voices. Because exposing this scandal would require admitting that the system is broken and that progressive ideology has overridden basic national loyalty. This hearing confirms what many Americans already suspect. Our government has lost its moral compass. Taxpayers are treated like an ATM. Borders are treated like suggestions. Terrorist ties are ignored as long as the organization checks the right ideological boxes. This is not compassion. It is recklessness. And if we do not demand accountability now, it will happen again. More money, less oversight, more excuses, more danger. The American people deserve answers. We deserve audits. We deserve prosecutions where laws were broken. And most of all, we deserve leaders who put this country first. Because if we don't, no one else will. If this makes you angry, good. It should. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. And never let them tell you that asking questions makes you an American. It makes you a patriot.